Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, Counter Spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into our time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Start our weekend off with some comedy. Eve Arden and Our Miss Brooks going back 72 years to April 1st, 1952. Another day, another dress. And we thank you for tuning in on this Saturday. This is April Fool's Day, the first day of April, 91st day of the year, 274 days remaining until we get to 2024. A day of Superman actors and an actress in the Superman movies that played two different roles and a Jimmy Olsen. Yeah. Well, not the same actor played Jimmy Olsen. That doesn't happen. 1826 on this date, Samuel Morey patented the internal combustion engine. Wrigley Company, founded in Chicago on this date in 1891. 1924, Adolf Hitler sentenced to 5 years in jail for his participation in the beer hall Putsch. However, he spent only 9 months in jail, during which he wrote the book Mein Kampf. 1933, the recently elected Nazis under Julius Streicher organized a one-day boycott of all Jewish-owned businesses in Germany, ushering in the series of anti-Semitic acts that would be known as the Holocaust. 1945, Operation Iceberg. U.S. troops landed on Okinawa in the last campaign of the war. 1946, a 7.8 magnitude earthquake near the Aleutian Islands created a tsunami that struck the Hawaiian Islands, killing 159, mostly in Hilo. 1948, military forces under the direction of the Soviet-controlled government in East Germany set up a land blockade of West Berlin. In 1954, President Eisenhower authorized the creation of the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado. Now, in 1963, the soap opera General Hospital debuted on ABC television. 1967, the Department of Transportation began operations, and in 1970, President Nixon signed the Public Health Cigarette Smoking Act into law that required not only Surgeon General warnings on tobacco products and banning cigarette advertising on television and radio in the U.S. that began on January 1st, 1971. That, by the way, that law, there are mixed opinions, but by and large, enough cases have held that you can't even play the ones in the old-time radio shows that I have to go through and edit a lot of these shows. Pretty seriously. In fact, there are a number of episodes of the Jack Benny Show I can't play because there's just too many tobacco references in it and too many Lucky Strike references. Can't do it. 1976, Apple Computer, founded by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. 1979, President Carter visited the site of the 3 Mile Island nuclear facility disaster and, following a tour, spoke to reporters.
Primary and overriding concern for all of us is the health and the safety of the people of this entire area. As I've said before, if we make an error, all of us want to err on the side of extra precautions and extra safety.
Now, Carter said radiation levels near the facility were quite safe, but he cautioned officials faced critical decisions on how to dissipate a radioactive gas bubble. Incidentally, though Carter attended nuclear power school in the Navy, his father passed away and the former president resigned his commission prior to the completion of the training. So the mythology that President Carter was a nuclear scientist is false, though he probably had a better understanding than most when it came to nuclear power. 1987, President Reagan spoke to members of the College of Physicians in Philadelphia about the threat of AIDS.
The Public Health Service has issued an information and education plan for the control of AIDS. The federal role must be to give educators accurate information about the disease. Now, how that information is used must be up to schools and parents, not government. But let's be honest with ourselves. AIDS information cannot be what some call value neutral. After all, when it comes to preventing AIDS, don't medicine and morality teach the same lessons?
Now, the president spoke of a number of other issues plaguing medicine and medical costs, including the need for malpractice insurance and tort reforms. In 2001, an EP-3E U.S. Navy plane collided with a Chinese People's Liberation Army fighter jet.
They were intercepted by two People's Republic of China fighter aircraft. There was contact between one of the Chinese aircraft and the EP-3, and that caused enough damage for the U.S. aircraft to issue a Mayday signal. And they diverted to the Hainan Island in PRC.
The Navy crew made an emergency landing in Hainan in the People's Republic of China, Communist China, and was detained until a statement delivered by the U.S. government regarding the incident. The exact phrasing of the document intentionally ambiguous and allowed both countries try to save face while defusing a potentially volatile situation between militarily strong regional states. And in 2004, retired truck driver J.R. Triplett claimed a $239 million Mega Millions lottery prize. He told reporters about checking the numbers.
I said, "Sweetheart, we've got that number." And she kind of broke down and got down on her knees and said a little prayer, thank the Lord.
Now, while Triplett said the prize was no big deal and he'd spend it wisely, his wife Peggy told reporters she was going to shop till she dropped. Passing away on this date in history, the man who wrote The Entertainer, the piece of music featured in the motion picture The Sting, also wrote The Maple Leaf Rag. Scott Joplin, passing away on this date. Also singer Marvin Gaye, Jim Jordan of Fibber McGee and Molly fame, John Forsythe, fine actor, and the man behind Hill Street Blues, L.A. Law, Doogie Howser, M.D., Cop Rock, and NYPD Blue. Cop Rock proving you can't have all hits. Stephen Boccio, passing away on this date in history. Birthdates today include composer Sergei Rachmaninoff, also actor Lon Chaney Sr., actor Wallace Beery, Gordon Jump from WKRP in Cincinnati, The Big Boss, also actress Debbie Reynolds, and from all those MGM musicals, Jane Powell. This is birthday number 84 for the lady who starred in Love Story with Ryan O'Neal, Ally McGraw. Also, she was Lana Lang in Superman 3, and Martha Kent on Smallville. Annette O'Toole, 71 today. Pro wrestler, and I'm kind of a third-generation pro wrestler, Randy Orton, who's out on medical leave right now, 43 years old. He was Jimmy Olsen in Superman Returns. Sam Huntington, 41. From Saturday Night Live and Mad TV, Taron Killian, 41. And Hillary Scott of Lady A, the country singer, is 37 today. Though some of the people celebrating the first day of April is their birthday, if this is your birthday...
Hi, we're the Four Freshmen, and we just want to say, Happy birthday to you!
And we go back to Sunday, April 1st, 1951, 72 years ago today. Eve Arden starring as our Miss Brooks. Thank you for tuning in on this Saturday Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox here on your favorite radio station. Thanks for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Radio, television, and the movies. Eve Arden starring as our Miss Brooks. This episode from April Fool's Day, April 1st, 1951.
Colgate Dental Cream to clean your breath while you clean your teeth and help stop tooth decay. And Palmolive Shave Creams for a smoother, more comfortable way to shave bring you Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden. It's time once again for another comedy episode of Our Miss Brooks, under the direction of Al Lewis. Well, her salary as a teacher covers all her basic expenses, but our Miss Brooks, who teaches English at Madison High School, has discovered that there are certain luxuries it won't pay for.
Luxuries like clothing, for instance. However, last Monday, I dropped into Madame Amelia's dress shop to price some of the items she was featuring in a post-Easter sale. In no time at all, I discovered that if Madame Amelia would let me pay for it on time, I could easily afford the sales tax on her cheapest dress. But thanks to a proposition Madam made to me, I did leave the store with 4 new dresses. At breakfast Friday morning, my landlady commented on one of them.
Another day, another dress. It's a beauty, Connie.
Thanks, Mrs. Davis.
You've no idea what it's been like to sit opposite you during this past week. Every day a new dress that looks like the first breath of spring.
Glad you like them, Mrs. Davis.
But I wish you'd cheer up a little. Your dress looks like the first breath of spring, and your face looks like the last gasp of winter. What's the trouble, Connie?
Well, you know the agreement I have with Madame Amelia, don't you?
Why, yes. She said she'd give you a brand new suit free of charge if you'd introduce some of her clothes into Madison High School this week.
I wasn't only supposed to introduce them, Mrs. Davis. There was also supposed to be an increase in business.
Well, since you've been wearing the dresses, hasn't business increased?
25% at DuBarry's across the street.
That's ridiculous. The jump at DuBarry's is just a coincidence. You deserve the dress anyhow. Look at the work you've done. How many other teachers would want to wear a brand new dress to school every day?
I don't know. How many teachers are there in the United States? No, I'm afraid I haven't lived up to my part of the bargain. As a matter of fact, our agreement officially terminated last night. I was supposed to return the dresses then.
But you're wearing one of them this morning.
I just couldn't face my old blue jersey suit for at least one more day. Besides, I figured after all this time, somebody's bound to notice me.
You mean no one's paid any attention to your new outfits so far?
Well, I did get some encouragement yesterday. I'd been sitting opposite Mr. Boynton at lunch for 3 days in a row, and each day I had a new dress on. Yesterday, he finally noticed something different about me.
What did he say?
He said, "Miss Brooks, you've got some eraser dust on your neck." Of course, a few of the female members of the faculty admired the dresses, but they're evidently too poor to do any buying.
How about your principal, Connie? Did he comment on the transformation?
Mr. Conklin hasn't commented on anything but his newest economy drive.
Another one? Well, he just ordered a big cutback in school expenses last month.
That came from the Board of Education. This is his own idea, and you ought to see him enforce it. Why, I broke a pointer the other day while he was in my classroom, and before it even hit the floor, he had snatched up the short piece and filed down the rough edge.
Then what did he do with it?
He gave it to a teacher with long arms. Oh, he's a beauty, all right. That's Walter Denton. Be right there, Walter. I've got to run, Mrs. Davis. Thanks for breakfast.
You're welcome, dear. And don't look so discouraged about the deal with Madame Amelia. You've still got today to put it over.
I'll try.
Just remember this, Connie. Whether it's modeling or anything else, you only get out of something what you put into it.
Believe me, Mrs. Davis, everything I've got I've put into this dress. Please, Walter, keep your eyes on the road. What in the world are you staring at, anyway?
Just the most scintillating vision in the world.
Huh?
I wish I didn't have to drive at all. I wish I could just sit here and drink you in all your intoxicating loveliness.
Well, hand me a mirror. I'd like to get high, too. Honestly, Walter, this flattery is overwhelming.
Oh, it's only your due, Miss Brooks. Gosh, I've always admired you personally, but the way you've looked this last week makes the way you used to look positively hag-like.
I should have quit when I was ahead.
The dress you've got on today's a knockout, Miss Brooks. What are those colors in it?
They're chartreuse and cerise, Walter.
They are?
Of course, those are the fancy names. Actually, these colors are nothing but good old, down-to-earth, plain and simple puce and magenta.
Whatever they are, the way you've been dressing the last few days has had eyes popping all over the school.
That's funny. I haven't heard a thing.
Are you kidding? Why, half the female members of the faculty look like Eddie Cantor. Of course, I'll admit it took everybody a few days to start noticing your new wardrobe. But I think I have the answer for that.
Oh? What is it?
Well, it's because everyone has seen you in that blue jersey suit of yours for such a long time. It got so that after a while, nobody ever looked below your face. on the nose?
It sure does. Got a Kleenex? Oh, I am glad that somebody's finally noticing these outfits. I wouldn't be human if I wasn't.
Oh, don't you worry about that. You're human, all right.
Thanks for the affidavit.
Harriet told me you got the outfits at Madame Amelia's.
Uh-huh.
I told my mother about them last night, and she said she must be a wonderful dressmaker.
Oh, she is?
Yeah, my mother said she wants to visit the place herself, but she was wondering when would be a good time.
What is she doing yesterday? I mean, anytime's all right, I guess.
Oh, before I forget, Miss Brooks, when I spoke to Harriet on the phone this morning, she said to tell you to please stop at her dad's office as soon as you get to school.
Uh-oh. It's probably in connection with this new economy drive of his. I extravagantly requisitioned a new eraser last week.
Isn't this drive a pain? He's even cutting down on our athletic equipment. Here we got a big track meet coming up, and he won't provide any high hurdles for the guys to practice on. All we got is the old low hurdles.
Oh, that isn't an insurmountable problem, Walter.
What do you mean?
All you have to do is put up the low hurdles and let the boys run on their knees.
Who is it, and is your business urgent?
It's Miss Brooks, and it can wait indefinitely. Bye.
Not so fast. Come in, Miss Brooks. Now then, I'll come right to the point. The reason I wanted to... Miss Brooks, isn't that another new dress you have on?
Yes, sir.
Really remarkable. Miss Brooks, may I ask you a question?
Certainly, sir.
Are you able to dress this way on your salary, or have you come into an inheritance?
No, sir.
No, sir, what?
No, sir, Mr. Conklin. I mean, I haven't come into an inheritance.
But these new clothes, how do you pay for them?
Well, you see, sir,
You
it's
don't gamble, do you?
Oh, no, sir.
Well, I don't want to pry into your personal life. After all, you've worn that blue jersey job long enough. Suffice it to say that in the past week you've given the rest of the faculty something to shoot at.
The dresses can't be that bad.
On the contrary, they're very smart. But to get back to the reason for your being here, as you know, Miss Brooks, I am in the midst of a new economy drive here at Madison.
Oh, I know, Mr. Conklin. Mr. Boynton and I discussed it thoroughly at lunch yesterday.
Oh, then you're beginning to feel the pinch.
Certainly not. All we ever do is talk. I'm afraid everyone's feeling the pinch.
Well, believe me, it's a necessary measure in these parlous times. Mr. Stone, the head of the school board, is coming over to my home this afternoon for tea. Naturally, I'm interested in impressing him with the strides we've made at Madison.
Naturally.
And it has occurred to me that an excellent way to convince him of the wisdom of my economy policy is to show him what a teacher such as yourself can do on a limited budget.
Me?
Yes, Miss Brooks. If you'd come to our home this afternoon, my wife and I would be most pleased to see you. In one of your new dresses, that is.
Well, that's very nice, Mr. Conklin,
Oh,
but I...
and since it's a bit late for her to pick up anything, would you consider lending Mrs. Conklin one of your other new creations? Just for the day, of course.
Well, Mr. Conklin,
I
it's
don't
like
want you
this.
to think that this is a command performance, Miss Brooks, but you will be there at 4, won't you?
Yes, sire. Sir.
Excuse me. Principal's office. Who? Oh, she's in my office right now. It's for you, Miss Brooks. Be brief, please.
Yes, sir. Hello? Who is this? Madam who? Oh, yes, I know last night was the last... Yes, but I just have them back today. But I... Very well. As quickly as possible. Goodbye. Well, if you'll excuse me, sir, I'd better be getting into class.
Nothing wrong, is there?
Wrong? Oh, what could be wrong? I just don't want to be late. You know how hungry my pupils are for learning.
Starved is the word. Well, you'll be at my house at 4 sharp, Miss Brooks. Is that correct?
Mr. Conklin, I'll be there with bells on, if nothing else.
What a wonderful cast of this show. On CBS Radio from 1948 to 1957, CBS Television from 1952 to 1956, and in 1956, it was adapted for the big screen. And the biggest issue was when Philip Boynton, Jeff Chandler left, and Robert Rockwell came in. That caused some issues. Rockwell not as good at the character as Jeff Chandler was. All righty, from April 1st, 1951, our Miss Brooks on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. The news from 72 years ago today follows these messages from your favorite radio station. Here's Mike Lindell talking about getting your best friend something special.
And Mike, you've done it again. You've brought us an amazing line of dog beds.
This has been a long time coming. It starts with the same patented fill for your dogs now as we do My Pillow. I wanted everything covered in sizes from your largest dog to your smallest dog. You can throw them in the washer and dryer. The dogs love it. They asked, and here they are. This is why you get the dog bed. This is the main reason. The dogs love it.
And you've got that 10-year warranty, right?
I can do it because the dogs love it. They don't want to wreck their bed.
And you can get these MyPillow dog beds at a price lower than the big box stores, as low as $19.95. Call 1-800-928-4715, 1-800-928-4715, or go to mypillow.com/pet and use my promo code Wyatt. Treat your best friend to a MyPillow dog bed, mypillow.com/pet. Promo code Wyatt. Thank you for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. You're listening to an episode this hour of Our Miss Brooks starring Eve Arden, as it was originally broadcast Sunday, April 1st, 1951, in the newspapers. Of that Sunday, 72 years ago, these were some of the headlines. President Truman, in a sweeping order yesterday, provided draft deferments for hundreds of thousands of college boys. His executive order authorizes draft boards to pass over students whose grades are good or who pass a special aptitude test to be given throughout the country. Some 800,000 are expected to take the test this spring and summer in one of the most gigantic examining jobs in history. Those now in college can take it starting May 26, but boys who haven't started college will not be given the examination until after they become freshmen. Clarence E. McVeigh says he's going to stay in jail so his son can stay in school. 48-year-old carpenter McVeigh has been in jail for 2 days. He disobeyed a court order to take his son David, 6, out of school. David was 6 last November 4th. State law, a child must be 6 years old by October 1st to be eligible for public school that year. But David started to school in September and has been making good grades. McVeigh told reporters he'll stay in jail until I rot before I take little David out of school now. An aroused citizenry turning the heat on the nation's underworld, and the mobsters are starting to sizzle. One of the clearest aftermaths of the Senate Crime Committee's recent spotlighting of criminals. Not just a matter of cheese at the cops. The people themselves are showing signs of a vigilante spirit. From California to New Mexico, citizens are forming or rejuvenating organizations to combat crime that corrupts civic life. Will that enthusiasm last? Some promise that it will, such as the former ambassador to Argentina, Spriel Braden, and now head of the recently reformed New York City Anti-Crime Committee. Worcester, Massachusetts. After attending the ceremony at which her 20th baby was baptized, 45-year-old Mrs. John May told Newsman, "This is getting publicity the hard way." Army induction officers at Fort Custer, Michigan, completely baffled in an attempt to place a draftee, 23-year-old Joe Hartman, in an occupation suiting his abilities. Joe's civilian status was apprentice wild animal trainer and assistant to Clyde Beatty. In an attempt to be helpful, Joe volunteered if the Army can't use a wild animal trainer, I'm also a sword swallower and fire eater. And if apartment house tenant James Mulphy had known that 60 firemen were coming to dinner, he might have baked a cake. Smoke pouring from a window of his Tarrenton, Pennsylvania apartment summoned the firemen, who found Mulphy sitting calmly in his smoke-filled room. And Mulphy asked the firemen, "What are you doing?" The firemen burst into an adjoining room and found the fire. It was on the stove, under a steak, cooked the way Mulphy liked them. Very well done. And those some of the day's top news stories as reported in the newspapers of Sunday, April 1st, 1951, on your radio, Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden. The conclusion follows these messages. You're listening to the Saturday edition of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Sunday's Classic Radio Theater, an episode of Gangbusters from 68 years ago, April 2nd, 1955, the case of the mistreated lady. Roger Kenzel picks up two hitchhikers who kill him, and they later beat up his girlfriend, Marie. And you will hear from Washoe County, Nevada, Sheriff Bud Young narrating the episode. And that will make our Nevada Talk Network listeners very interested. That'll be coming up on Sunday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Gangbusters. Let's wrap up this Saturday edition of Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden. 72 years ago, April 1st, 1951.
Well, by lunchtime, I had almost decided to confess to Mr. Conklin that I didn't really own any of the Madame Amelia dresses. But before making that decision, I thought I'd discuss it with Mr. Boynton. When I arrived at the school cafeteria, I purchased my lunch and had just sat down to a table when who should come walking by but Mr. Boynton himself. Naturally, he stopped immediately.
Sorry, Miss Brooks. I didn't see your foot there in the aisle.
Oh, forgive me, Mr. Boynton. I didn't mean to trip you so hard. I hope your lunch isn't all wasted.
Oh, no, Miss Brooks. Luckily, my salad landed right side up, and my hamburger landed on my salad.
Well, here's a napkin. You landed on your Jell-O.
Thanks.
Let me help you pick up your dishes.
Gosh, that was a strawberry Jell-O I sat in. Does it look terribly messy, Miss Brooks?
Not at all, Mr. Boynton. In fact, it's rather attractive. I bet when you walk down the school steps, you'll look just like a sunset. But, Mr. Boynton, there's something I'd like to ask you.
Oh, before you do, Miss Brooks, I'd like to pop a question to you first. Of course, it might be considered quite personal, but with your permission, I'll pop it anyway.
If you're going to pop the question, I've been waiting for you to pop. Pop away, Pop.
Miss Brooks, that dress you've got on, isn't that another new one?
Why, Mr. Boynton, you've been paying attention after all. Do you like it?
Oh, very much. It's a very interesting shade. Yellow, isn't it?
Just where the butter landed when you dropped your tray. It's mostly chartreuse, Mr. Boynton.
Well, it's very exciting. Almost identical in shade to the skin of a young frog. This is the third or fourth lovely new dress you've put on this week. How do you do it, Miss Brooks?
I just drop them over my head and pull up the zipper.
Of course, I was very fond of your blue jersey suit, too. It held a sort of sentimental attraction for me. You know, that's the suit you were wearing when we met.
Yes, 4 years ago.
Well, I must admit I wasn't too crazy about it at first, but, well, it really grew on me.
Me, too. I had quite a time chiseling it off last Monday. But about those new dresses, Mr. Boynton,
Miss Brooks, the fact that you were able to acquire such garments on a teacher's salary is extremely commendable.
Well, thank you, Mr. Boynton, but...
Now, I've always admired a woman who can budget herself properly. A woman who can do that could be a real asset to a man.
She could?
A man could hunt for such a woman for years and years.
4 of them, to be exact.
With a clever and thrifty companion, there's no telling how far a man could go.
Go. Continue, Mr. Boynton.
Well, to sum up my feelings in the matter, I can only say that this type of woman is downright marriage timber. No, I'm serious, Miss Brooks. Seeing you in these new outfits has opened my eyes, and, well, there's something I'd like to say to you.
Pardon me, Miss Brooks, but I've got to talk to you for a minute.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, Walter, what is it?
I'm not interrupting anything, am I?
Just my future. What can I do for you?
Well, there's a delivery truck outside from Madame Amelia's dress shop. The driver says you've got 4 dresses to send back.
To send back?
Yes, it's just a temporary measure, Mr. Boynton.
You mean the dresses are all going to be altered, Miss Brooks?
No, Walter. Like I said before, just my future.
Hi, Miss Brooks. Heading for Daddy's office?
Yes, I am, Harriet.
I just left him. I've never seen Daddy in such excellent humor, Miss Brooks. He's sure that your new gowns will make a big impression on Mr. Stone this afternoon. In fact, he said that your little visit this morning was like a tonic to him.
Wait till he hears the Mickey I've got for him now. I'm afraid I won't be able to come to tea this afternoon.
Won't be able to come? But why not, Miss Brooks? And where's the gorgeous Madame Amelia dress you had on this morning?
In a delivery truck on Main Street.
But I don't understand. You're wearing your old blue jersey again. Where did you get that?
Out of a bundle I had ready for the Salvation Army. It's a long and gruesome story, Harriet, but I had to send the dresses back. You see, I never really owned them. I was just modeling them for Madame Amelia. If business increased, she said she would give me a free one, but it didn't, so she didn't, and I'm back where I started last week. Shall we dance?
Well, don't look so desperate, Miss Brooks. All isn't lost.
Then where is it?
You're going to love me for this. I was so captivated by those new gowns of yours that during your English class, I secretly sketched 2 of them. Then I took the patterns to home economics class, and we've spent the past couple of days making exact copies.
What?
I know you promised to lend one to Mother, so it'll work out just perfectly. Of course, we made them out of ersatz material, but beggars can't be choosers. And after all, the main thing is not to disappoint Daddy.
But don't you think your father and Mr. Stone will notice the difference?
Of course not, Miss Brooks. When it comes to dresses, women have been pulling the wool over men's eyes for years. Well, Miss Brooks, what do you think of my idea?
To tell the truth, Harriet, it's not bad.
I'm glad we got home ahead of Daddy, Miss Brooks. It gave me a chance to reinforce some of the weak places in this dress. Now, stand still while I pin this basting in back. Where are the pins I asked you to hold?
I've got them in my mouth, Harriet. Help yourself.
Your mouth? Why, that's no place to put pins.
Ouch! Neither is that.
Sorry. We've got to hurry, though. I heard Daddy and Mr. Stone go into the living room about 5 minutes ago.
I must admit you copied the style of Madame Amelia's dress perfectly, Harriet. But tell me, what kind of material did you use?
Well, we started with rayon, and when we ran out, we used muslin.
Some of it feels like cheesecloth to me.
Oh, it's loaded with cheesecloth. But don't worry, Miss Brooks. The way I've got it basted, no one can possibly tell the difference.
I'll bet your mother will tell the difference when she puts hers on.
Well, frankly, Miss Brooks, I haven't had a chance to tell her it's a copy. I just left it on her bed when she was getting the tea ready and then rushed back here to you.
What? You mean to tell me your mother doesn't know there's nothing between her and a life of shame but some cheesecloth and a fervent prayer?
Gee, I never thought of it that way. If Mother bends over or sits down too quickly, we're sunk.
We're sunk? Your mother won't be in such good shape either.
You've both got to be very careful. I tell you what I'll do, Miss Brooks. If I see anything beginning to go, I'll give you a verbal signal.
A verbal signal?
Yes. Since we'll be having tea, I'll just say something like, sugar and cream, Miss Brooks, or pass the lemon. Now, come on. Everybody's waiting for your personal appearance.
With the wrong kind of a break, this can be the most personal appearance I've ever made. But mine not to reason why. Lead on, Harriet.
Right in here, Miss Brooks. Well, Here we are, Daddy.
So you are. You know my daughter Harriet, Mr. Stone.
Certainly. Hello, Harriet.
How do you do, sir?
And Miss Brooks. Well, that is an attractive dress you have on.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
I've been telling Mr. Stone about the wardrobe you've acquired recently, Miss Brooks. It certainly gives impetus to an economy drive when a teacher can do what she's done, eh, Mr. Stone?
Very impressive, Conklin.
And thanks to the way I manage my personal budget, Mrs. Conklin has been able to enhance her wardrobe recently. She's probably jumping into her new duds right now.
I don't advise it. Oh, I see she's left the tea right here on this table. May I act as temporary hostess?
Please do.
I'd love some tea, Miss Brooks. Sugar and cream, please.
So soon?
I'll pour it for him, Miss Brooks. You stand still.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hello, Mrs. Conklin. Happy to see you again. Say, that's a stunning dress you have on.
Yes, you look positively ravishing, my dear. Stand just as you are. Don't move a muscle.
Yes, hold it for about 45 minutes.
I don't believe I've ever seen you looking lovelier, Martha. You and that gown are a match that was made in heaven.
Oh, now, Osgood. Honestly, Mr. Stone, sometimes when Osgood pays me a compliment, he gets so extravagant with his praise, I could just split.
You're holding the wrong thought, Mrs. Conklin. May I pour you some tea?
Oh, thank you, dear, but I can pour it myself. Bending over is good for me.
Oh, but you mustn't bend, Mother. Here, I'll get you a cup.
Oh, I'd rather do it myself, Harriet. After all, the more one bends over, the more one takes off around one's middle.
But, Mrs. Conklin, one can take too much of one's middle. After all, it's nice to have something between one's bottom and one's top.
Yes. But why are we standing? Let's sit down, shall we?
Very well.
Oh, wait. It's not healthy to sit down after a heavy meal.
Heavy meal? But none of us has had anything to eat since lunchtime.
I know, but why take chances?
You and your quips, Miss Brooks. Now, let's all be seated.
Just a moment.
What is it now?
I propose a standing toast to our host and hostess.
Hear, hear.
A toast to our host and hostess.
Now, can we sit down?
Would anyone like to hear some music?
Oh, that's a great idea, Harriet. Get out your phonograph record of John Philip Sousa playing the Star-Spangled Banner.
Now, stop the horseplay, you two. Sit down, Mr. Stone. Now, just where were we in our discussion, sir?
You were pointing out to me, Osgood, what a teacher could do on her present salary if she really tried.
Exactly. And not only a teacher, but anyone who lives on a budget. Take that dress my wife is
Oh,
wearing.
now let's not talk about me anymore, Osgood.
Well, why not, my dear? Blushing becomes you.
Oh, well, I'm just a little warm. I think I'll open a window in here.
It's not that warm in here.
Perhaps not, but I thought I'd like to let in a little more air.
Please, Martha, just sit down.
Very well.
What was that?
That was Mrs. Conklin letting some more air in.
Sounded like something ripping. Is that your dress, Mrs. Conklin?
Oh, certainly not. It's still the same lovely three-piece suit it's always been.
Three-piece suit? Martha, stand up a minute.
Yes, Osgood.
What did I tell you? It's the same lovely four-piece suit it's always been. With two pair of skirts.
This dress is coming apart at the seams.
But I don't understand it.
Neither do I, but I'd better get into my bedroom and change. Excuse me, please.
Miss Brooks, perhaps you can explain what's going on here.
Not now, Mr. Conklin. I'd better go in and help Mrs. Conklin change.
I'm sure she can manage by herself. Now, sit down, Miss Brooks.
Yes, sir.
Sugar and cream, Miss Brooks.
Get your own sugar and cream, Harriet. Miss Brooks, sit down.
What's going on here?
Not much, Mr. Stone, but an awful lot is coming off. I think I'd better pour myself a cup of tea.
Oh, the lemon, Miss Brooks. Where's the lemon?
It went that way.
Uncle, I think I'm beginning to see what this is all about.
I beg your pardon?
First, you give me all this talk about retrenching. Then you demonstrate that what a teacher can buy on her salary these days is actually nothing but junk. I've got to give you credit, Conklin. Your idea is brilliant.
It is?
Certainly. You've given me a graphic display that too much economy can't possibly work in these days of rising prices. Osgood Conklin, you're really clever.
Oh, come now. Don't deserve all the credit. After all, my wife and Miss Brooks were of considerable assistance, you know. Yes, indeed. You and Martha would make a fine pair of actresses, Miss Brooks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Conklin. I know one theater in town that would love to have us.
Oh, which one is that, Miss Brooks?
The Star and Garter Burlesque. Well, there wasn't much sense in sitting around in my drafty dress, so I said goodbye and backed out of the Conklins. When I arrived home, Mrs. Davis was most helpful and had just finished sewing me up when the phone rang. Hello?
Oh, hello, Miss Brooks. This is Mr. Boynton. I've been thinking of how lovely you looked in your new dress today, and I wondered if you'd like to take a little walk this evening.
Oh, you took me by surprise, Mr. Boynton. I'm afraid I dropped the receiver. Hold on a moment, I'll pick it up. I'm sorry, Mr. Boynton, but I can't see you tonight.
But why not? It's a beautiful night. The moon is out, the stars are out.
If this wasn't a party line, would I give you an answer?
This is Vern Smith reminding you to tune in next week to another Our Miss Brooks show brought to you by Palmolive Shave Creams for a smoother, more comfortable way to shave, and Colgate Dental Creams to clean your breath while you clean your teeth and help stop tooth decay.
Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden, is produced by Larry Burns, written by Al Lewis and Arthur Alsberg, with the music of Wilbur Hatch.
From April Fool's Day 1951, 72 years ago, Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Have a great Saturday. Thank this station. Support their advertisers, please. Their kindness and courtesy allow us to be here each and every time we roll around on your favorite station. Miss a day, you don't have to miss a show. We do 21 hours of Classic Radio Theater each and every week. You can hear them all on demand at classicradio.stream. You can also find our social media links. And if you'd like to help support the program, you can buy me a coffee. That Buy Me a Coffee money goes toward acquiring additional Classic Radio collections and keeping our distribution channels up and running. classicradio.stream. Thanks so much for tuning in. Tell all your friends the greatest radio shows of all time are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station.